Welcome to the Point. It was another history-making week in our nation's capital. For the second time, the United States House of Representatives impeached President Donald Trump. Now the matter will move to the Senate. And even as the House was voting on the measure, I was talking to Senator Gary Peters about what's next in the process. Senator, this has been a remarkable time in Washington, D.C. We're seeing, for the first time ever, a second impeachment of a sitting president. And sooner or later, and maybe you can give me some insight on that, you are going to have to vote when it comes to the trial over in the Senate. I know you have said before you hoped that there would be some mechanism by which this president could be moved out of office. Can I assume that, at least for now, that you are in favor of impeachment when it comes to the Senate?
Well, you're right, Rick. I mean, I was hoping we could have Vice President Pence invoke the 25th Amendment and have him moved immediately. I was hoping that President Trump might resign, given the outrageous behavior that he had been engaged in. That didn't happen, so now we're moving forward with impeachment. And I think the facts are clear. The facts are clear that he is not fit for office. When you have a sitting president of the United States basically inciting a violent attack on the United States Capitol, that is reprehensible. It needs to be called out. It needs and he needs to be held accountable for that. And this is the action that's before us right now.
What is that going to look like in the Senate, or do you know yet? We've heard some conversation that you would spend part of your day working on the new administration appointees and trying to approve cabinet and other officials, and part of the day working on a trial for the impeachment. Do you know what it looks like when you come back after the inauguration?
Yeah, I don't want to speculate on that because I don't know. I don't think anybody knows right now how that will look, but I will say that it is certainly incredibly important that we allow the Biden administration to get set up as quickly as possible for the sake of our country. We certainly need to deal with this pandemic. We right now need to get more vaccines in the arms of folks, and we need to have a coordinated federal response to do that. That has not happened. We have currently a president of the United States who's more focused on spreading false conspiracy theories and spreading lies about the election and not dealing with the work at hand, which is the health of the American people. I'm also focused as the incoming chair of the Senate Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee to make sure that we get confirmed as quickly as possible a Secretary of Homeland Security. That needs to be done immediately. And certainly when you think about cabinet officials, in my mind, the two most important to get confirmed are the Secretary of Homeland Security and the Secretary of Defense. There isn't anything more important that the federal government does than to keep people safe. We have to get that done as well as deal with this pandemic. So there's a lot of work to do. We've got to be focused on that. But certainly holding the president accountable for his outrageous behavior is something that is important, not just for now, but it is important for the future. Future presidents have to know that if they engage in this type of outrageous behavior, it will be roundly condemned by the American people, and they will be held accountable in the most severe terms.
What is the working relationship in Washington going to be like? You and I have talked about this several times over the past number of years. I've also talked to your colleague, Senator Stabenow, about a Washington where relationships and engagement with other members on the other side of the aisle has not been as easy as it once was. And now we've created, there has been created another chasm that members may have to try to overlook, work around, or work through. What does it take in Washington to get some type of pulling together?
Well, I think we have to pull together as a country as well. It starts with the whole country coming together. That's why I think it is absolutely critical now that we have Republican elected officials who have been basically putting out false information about the election. And despite the fact there's absolutely no evidence of widespread fraud, they continue to support this really very dangerous message that we did not have a free and fair election. It's clear we did. The facts are very clear, and it's fundamental to this democracy that people realize that when they go to vote, their vote is counted and their voice is heard, and that we have a peaceful transfer of power. So it's absolutely critical that those Republicans that have been putting out this false information realize just how dangerous it is. I've been saying it since right after the election, that the rhetoric that I'm hearing from the president and far too many elected officials in the Republican Party, that language is dangerous. I said it over and over again. Anybody who thinks I was not right merely needs to look at the videos from the violent attack on the Capitol. It is dangerous talk. That has to stop. When that stops, then we can begin the process of reconciliation and coming together as a people and understanding we have really big problems to deal with. The pandemic, first and foremost, we have to deal with it. And the way we've always gotten through problems in this country is when we come together as one people. I'm certainly committed to doing that. I take pride in working in a bipartisan way. I have many of my Republican colleagues who want to get back to that. Some don't, but many do. But we have to step up and show that we can govern together.
Is this going to be a matter of a split Republican Party where there are, as you point out, some Republicans who may be willing to try to work towards some kind of a consensus idea, while others, and I heard some just moments ago, because even as you and I are speaking, there's debate going on over in the House, where some are saying, look, we don't think Democrats ever tried to come together with President Trump in 4 years, and we're not ready to do it now.
There we have to come together, and I think there is certainly a feeling with many Republicans that we have to do that. I work with Republicans daily. I work on a bipartisan basis. In fact, I have had more of my bills signed into law than any other Democratic senator, and I've worked with my Republican colleagues to do that. I served in the minority in the Senate and got bills passed, and President Trump signed those bills. So we can find ways to come together and work together. But it is going to require all of us to do that. But I do believe that there are some Republicans who are simply unwilling to do that. But I do know that there are others who do want to come together. And it's incumbent for us as the American people to reward people who are willing to work together to find common ground, and understanding that has to be the way we work going forward. And that also comes from the will of the American people to demand it.
In order to convict the president, 17 Republican senators would have to join Democrats in finding him guilty of the impeachment charge. As if the recent weeks haven't brought enough dramatic news, an almost 7-year-old crisis in Flint was put back in the spotlight with news that Michigan's Attorney General Dana Nessel was charging 9 people, including former Governor Rick Snyder, in connection with the Flint water crisis. Before the arraignments, I talked with the person who first alerted me to a problem with the water in Flint, State Senator and Flint native, Jim Ananich. Senator, I was sitting on a sofa in your office 7 years ago or thereabouts, and you were telling me about the beginnings of a problem with water in Flint. And now fast forward to now when we're hearing, though we can't independently confirm, that there may be charges against people, including the former governor. Tell me what that says to you and how this impacts you and your hometown.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And it's if you can imagine, this is how I feel. I think a lot of people in my community feel. It's the emotions are all over the place, right? I mean, it kind of, I think it validates the concerns that a lot of us brought forward, the lies that were told to us, the facts that we were told, the fact that we were told we were crazy and that none of this was happening, when all along, folks within state government knew this was happening and just chose not to tell people about it. So, like you said, we can't confirm exactly who's being charged or when. We know it's an ongoing investigation, but, I think, depending on who does get charged, I think it sends a strong message to people in Flint and across the state and really across the world, because people have been following this, that no person, no politician, that no one, no matter how powerful they are, is above the law. And I think that's extremely important.
We know that there have been monetary settlements, that there have been attempts to try to whatever degree as possible make the city, but more important, the residents there, whole. First of all, talk to me about those efforts and if you think they're adequate, and does this add another layer that might also help to heal a city and a group of people who understandably do not trust government?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, so the settlement, just for, I know, but in case folks that aren't following as much as we are, it equated to a $641 million. The lion's share coming from the state, $600 million, and then other entities covering it. And there are still a number of folks that chose not to be part of the settlement and are going forward with trial. And if they lose, this number could reach, or if they settle later, this number could reach well over $1 billion. Plus half a billion dollars in state and federal resources to remediate the problem. I think this should go a long way, right? To show that, I look at Flint as a book, and there are a number of chapters. The book's nowhere near being nowhere being finished, but this is an important chapter, especially when, this process, finishes itself. Obviously, charges are important. The legal process and taking that to the finish, that's when we have justice, right? And but the fact that there are potentially going to be high-level folks being charged, I think, is extremely important. And I think it's, an important step. It doesn't undo what was done. It doesn't bring back any harm that was done to people, but it shows people, I think it's important sometimes to put a nail, a stake in the ground and say, you can't do this to any community. No community should be treated as a throwaway community, from the smallest community in the UP to my hometown of Flint. It doesn't matter how powerful you are or what your income status is, or if you're black or white or poor or rich. Everybody should be treated with respect. And that didn't happen in Flint. And I think these charges, depending on what they are, will send a strong message and shockwaves, hopefully, and to make sure people understand you don't treat people like that.
And finally, I don't know if you're prepared to answer this, if you've had a chance to think about it, but potentially, not knowing what the charges are going to be, as we both pointed out, we're talking about a former governor of the state of Michigan, a former head of the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, and others that worked in the administration. Potentially, some of these people, depending on those charges, could go to jail. Is that the optic that you're looking for?
I'm not. I try to be. This is a tough one, right? Because I'm not a lawyer. I'm also emotionally connected to it. I live here in Flint. My family was part of this. As you know, we've talked about this before. I adopted my son. I have no idea what kind of harm might have been done. So, I'm not a vengeful person by nature. I want the legal process to follow itself through the end. There's a lot of people that are going to want jail time, for the governor and others. I want to see, I just want to see some form of justice, and I don't want to say exactly what that is, because I think the court process has to play itself out. But I'm angry, there's no question. And I'm angry at some of those individuals you mentioned and the way that they handled it. And, we'll see how it plays out, but there's no question. I think this will be an important day whenever it happens.
All of the individuals charged pled not guilty. Former Governor Snyder is due back in court January 19th. When we come back, we'll shift from some of the more jarring news of the week to a potential bright spot in the response to COVID-19 and a helping hand on the way to some hard-hit businesses here in the state. That's next. To the Point. Welcome back to the Point. Mark Burton is the president and chief executive officer in the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, and as such has been working over the past 10 months to help businesses negatively impacted by COVID-19. This week, he announced millions of dollars of grants available for some of those hardest hit and talked to us about them and how businesses can access that help. When we last talked, we were talking about the need for more assistance for businesses kind of across the board, and this past week there was some significant movement in that direction. Let's talk a little bit first of all about the bigger package that could be considerable help for small businesses, if I understand it, between perhaps $15,000 and $20,000 depending on the circumstance. Talk to me about that, if you would.
Sure, Rick. Yeah, there's $55 million that was approved this week by the Michigan Strategic Fund. And the grant difference, $20,000, is available for those small businesses that have had to close recently due to the orders, public health orders. And $15,000 is available for those that did not have to close, kept operating, but obviously felt the impact of a reduced capacity restrictions and other things that affected their bottom line.
Talk to me about the kind of businesses that would be eligible for those and what the process would be, and understanding that for certain businesses, this has been a long and dramatic interruption in their business, and this is by no means going to be the only thing that they may need, but this may be the thing that many businesses need right now. And if you're one of those businesses, who qualifies and how do they then proceed to get in line for some of this money?
Sure, Rick. I think the perfect example of a business that's eligible for these grants would be restaurants. They have, we are in our 11th month now of this crisis and have had to sometimes increase capacity, decrease capacity over the course of the crisis. But right now, we were specifically focused on helping as many as possible survive the winter. So right now, there's a desperate need, and we hope that this $55 million grant program will help satisfy some of that need. And we also expect that we will continue to do more to make sure that businesses are able to survive the winter and come out in the spring, obviously when weather can increase business for many of those, as well as obviously vaccinations that are continuing to roll out.
Well, and even as we speak, there's the suggestion that a new administration could come up with nearly $2 trillion more in COVID relief, and obviously that could be something that could be in the pipeline. But for this amount of money right now, if I'm a restaurateur or if I have a small business so impacted, what can I do? What should I be doing? And what is my timeline to try to figure out if I'll be eligible for some of this money?
Sure. So information is accessible right now on our website, michiganbusiness.org/survival. The application window will go live Tuesday the 19th at 9 a.m. It will close on Friday the 22nd at 12 noon. So the application process continues to be very user-friendly and relatively easy to apply. And once the window closes, we will work with 15 of our local economic development partners across the state who will actually review those applications and select those who will be awarded funds.
And it's important for people to recognize that that's a relatively short window, so they need to be prepared. They need to go and check out the website now to know what they need to be doing on Tuesday, right?
Right. The website, I mentioned again, michiganbusiness.org/survival has the application questions already on it, has a video that can help explain what filling it out, what that process actually looks like, and answers questions on specifics regarding eligibility and other questions that folks will want to know ahead of time.
And just to kind of put a finer point on this, we have heard estimates from industry sources that a really frightening percentage of restaurants and bars could be in danger of closing permanently without some outside assistance. So this is at least a shot for those folks who have had to sustain either partial or total closures over this, as you point out, past as we move into our 11th month now of this pandemic response. So this may be an opportunity for some of those who have really struggled to maybe keep the doors open at least a little longer, right?
Absolutely, Rick. And, I think the struggle for many of them is fixed costs at this point, particularly in the winter months with reduced capacity and customer base. So yes, these funds we think are critical in terms of being able to pay for things like rent and mortgage and payroll, and the relief will hopefully carry them a couple of more months and give us more time to advocate for more funds both on the state and federal level to help as well.
I don't want to make it sound as though these are the only businesses that have been impacted, but we know that restaurants have been deeply impacted and bars, but performance venues have been perhaps even harder hit because you can't get a bunch of people together to watch performances. And this week, you also took action that could be helpful for them, and I suspect the process is similar, but tell me about performance venues and what's available for them.
Sure. So a separate program, which is actually our 23rd program overall for COVID relief. We have $3.5 million that's available for those live event venues. And we are working in conjunction with the Michigan Independent Venue and Promoter Association. So we will have an application window that's a little different, obviously, than the other one. This one opens up on January 21st and will stay open for a week. So it will close at 12 noon on the 28th. At that point, we hand off the applications to the association, who will make the determinations. They'll get back to us and we will distribute the grants. But to your point, it's very, very helpful awards right now for these venues that have continued to struggle given the restrictions over the past 11 months.
So again, the process is similar for them, and what kind of cash assistance might be available for them?
Sure. So grants are up to $40,000 in this case, and that is a reflection of the length and the closures that they have been under during the course of this crisis. So $40,000 again will be much needed capital to keep these facilities able to function going into the spring. And again, when we hope to see vaccinations mass distributed and they can get back in business.
When you look at these programs, I think you said this is the 23rd program that you've come forward with. How intense is the pressure for you and your group to continue to keep businesses afloat? Because we know this has an overall impact on all of our economies, the economy of the state, and just the general welfare and benefit of our local municipalities. I mean, this must have a different feel to it than your typical kind of high pressure job of business development.
Yeah, Rick, absolutely right. I think, as we have seen this crisis get longer and longer and longer, we've always hoped, right, for a quick end to it, but that's obviously not been the case. So yeah, our work has focused very intensely on small businesses in particular, who are struggling the most through no fault of their own, given the responses that are necessary to keep flattening our curve here for coronavirus and obviously moving beyond the public health crisis sometime soon. So yeah, we've done 23 programs, over $240 million now of COVID relief efforts. We're proud of that, and we are very happy to be able to step up and assist, not just in the relief, but also as we look forward into recovery.
When we finally see what happens with the new administration and how the federal government will respond, I assume that there are no guarantees, but I assume that there's some anticipation on your part that there will be more relief in the pipeline, and I assume you're already planning for programs to deal with that should it become available.
Absolutely, and we continue to advocate at the federal level with actually the previous administration as well as the Biden administration, and we continue to advocate at the state level too. I mean, there is more that we can do with funding that would be able to help certain sectors and certain small businesses be able to continue to survive the winter and get into hopefully better times soon.
Are there any specifics? I mean, when you talk about there are things you could do, are there specifics that you would like to be doing right now if you had the funding?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think we have seen many of our programs be very successful. However, they have all had limits in terms of resources. So there are a number of programs that we had a lot of success on, targeting small businesses in particular, and even micro enterprises, that the very, very small businesses that we think continues to be necessary in terms of getting beyond the winter into the spring. And again, much of this, an important factor is obviously the vaccinations that continue to roll out and hopefully ramp up quickly.
Again, all the information about applying for those programs can be found on the MEDC website. When we come back, a final thought, to the point. In the past few weeks, we've been inundated with sounds and images that have been sometimes shocking. Even now, officials in Washington and Lansing are preparing for potential demonstrations as we head into a week that should be punctuated by a peaceful exchange of power from one administration to the next. All the while, the country is still waiting for a more comprehensive vaccination plan and talk of another COVID relief package in Washington. These are just some of the things we'll be covering when you join us each week. To the point.